Hello and welcome to Foam Shark Crafting. My name is Dave and today we're going to be building a scene from Super Mario Bros. 3. This scene here, actually. No, I mean this one. Which is going to be based off of this scene here. And then made to fit into this tiny 4x7 acrylic cube. Now because the scene is going to be crammed into such a specific space, measuring is going to be very important here. There we go. Now time to start chopping. Here you can see I'm using a Proxxon hot wire. And the guide I'm using here was made by Dungeons by Hand. It worked out okay, but the fitment's pretty tight, so you're gonna have to sand things down where it locks into place. Now for the most satisfying part, where we test the fitment. Alright, back to the hot wire. Okay, we've got the fit so perfect that if you press it down any further into the cube, it will never again come back out. Well, we've got it so close now, I think I'll just have to sand it down a little. I couldn't have asked for a more perfect fit. I added some spray adhesive to the bottom of the foam without testing it, so it ended up melting some of the edges, but overall it turned out okay. Now the scene is going to need that beautiful sky as we saw earlier, so I decided to slice off a piece from the bottom. We won't be needing it this tall anyway. I'm not very big on measuring unless I really have to, like for the cube, so most of my cuts are just kind of eyeballed. This'll do nicely. So we'll need room for the sky to sit, so we measure it up and send it through the old Proxxon one last time. And finally we test fit it again, and everything seems to be working perfectly. Now the entire stage seems to have that floor plank running along the top of it. So what we're going to do is indent the foam with a pen. It should be enough to create a little ridge which we'll go back over later during the painting phase. On your first try, attempt to make the line as straight as possible by hand. This will be a good reminder for you to use a guide next time. Now we'll just want to bevel the edges a bit with some sandpaper. Okay, this is looking good. Now we can move on to some clay. Here we're going to cut out a chunk of black overalls, because in the third Mario game he was going through an angsty phase, which is partly why I chose the original one instead of the Mario All-Stars remake. I just like the idea of Mario wearing black overalls instead of blue. I thought it would be a more unique piece overall. So once you're done rolling the clay into a piece of deer poop, decide that what you actually need is a smaller piece of deer poop and go from there. Here I'm dotting where the overall buttons will go just so I have some frame of reference for what direction he's going to be facing while I work. Now we just need to add two little cylindrical jumping legs and blend them straight into the body. Now that we have him looking like a little bob-omb on the move, we can look at giving him some of those ever so stylish work boots. You can test placing the feet on backwards like I did just for fun and on purpose, or avoid wasting the time and put them on right to begin with. Now that Mario's got his sweet red boots, we can move to the upper body. Just gotta roll out this spicy Italian sausage arm and we can worry about the next one later. Here I'm giving Mario his signature red bib, but decided he needed better coverage for when he digs into his
spaghetti.
So I stretched it out down over his back. Here I tried rolling out a head for Mario, but realized quickly that the residue on your hands from the red clay will easily be picked up by the pale fleshy clay. But with some freshly cleaned hands, we can finally give him a good head on his shoulders. And this wouldn't be Mario unless we fashioned a small dark sliver into his iconic 80s stash that he will not shave no matter how many times Peach asks him to.
Mario! Ah, mamma mia.
And with an oblong sphere for his nose, this guy can finally kick back and smell the
ravioli.
Now we just need to take a moment to style his mustache and make it look less like a dark tube under his nose and more like a fluffy push broom. On with some sick sideburns to get his hair started and whoop! Well, nothing wrong with using the 5-second rule for some sick burns. Now I botched my first attempt at placing the eye, giving him a bit of an alien appearance, but hey.
Things could be worse.
All we need to do is peel it off painfully and try again. The next morning, after Mario had some time to rest and recover from the trauma, I took another shot at placing the eye. And I'm happy to report that the operation was a complete success. Placing the second eye was actually a whole lot easier once I had the first down in the right spot.
Whoa!
Now to give this boy some ears. You know, he's actually starting to resemble Ned from Ned's Nude. Or maybe like Wallace from Wallace and Gromit, if he had a mustache and sideburns. Nah, that's just starting to get ridiculous. Alright, time to continue on with that hair. For the back we'll be adding 4 beans and then pressing them into the right shape. Here I started working out the size and shape of the hat, just making sure it would cover everything I needed it to. Alright, that's looking pretty good, but we can still see a bit of his scalp around the edges, so we'll have to fix that with a bit more hair. And it's at this point that I realize I've made Bob Hoskins as Mario. But that aside, I think we're now finally ready to give Mario a hat to cover up his male pattern baldness. Whoops. Well, I guess now that hat is to both cover up the bald spot and that ugly goose egg I just gave him. And with me still being a Butterfingers, we're just kind of pushing through to the end. All he really needed at this point was an arm and 2 hands. And the buttons for his overalls. I almost forgot the buttons. And with those final touches in place, I think we can call Mario done.
It's me, Mario.
Now for the power-up leaf. All I really did for this is flatten out some red clay and then carve around it with one of my tools, peel it off, and shape it until I was satisfied with what I had. Now we're going to roll out a fresh red ball for the shell, shape it into a bit of a dome, and then I ended up pressing it into the side of my X-Acto knife to give it that wavy shell look like it has in the game. Now I'm on to making that little rim that goes around the bottom of the shell. I will admit to returning most of my colored clay, the ones I didn't think I needed anyway. White was among them. Turns out I needed white. So I instead switched to my beige Super Sculpey and we'll just paint it later. Now making the Goomba is refreshingly simple. All you need is 4 spheres, one of which you take some time shaping, and the other 3 just get mushed onto that.
It's a mushroom.
Okay, so here you can see we got our Goomba, our Mario, but what's all this other stuff? Well, I remade the shell and the leaf, because the old ones were a bit too small and they just weren't working for me shape-wise. I also made the 2 bushes for the scene that we'll need. I figured they were just kind of boring to watch being sculpted, so I did them off camera. And as you know from the beginning of the video, we only end up using 1. Now watch as I hesitantly begin painting the plates of the turtle shell. This actually took a whole lot of practice before figuring out how I was going to do it. The turtle shell patterns are just confusing to me. You can see on the mat next to Mario that I used the smaller shell we made earlier as practice, and it is darkened from many, many attempts before I finally got it somewhat right. Now for the leaf. This one was super simple as it was only a few lines and you're finished. Finishing touches on the turtle shell, all done. Didn't turn out too bad, pretty quick honestly. Okay, we're gonna take a quick detour to prime the thin sheet of foam we'll be using for our sky. For primer, I'm using Black Magic Craft's Mod Podge and Black Paint Recipe. You can see the magic works very quickly after application. It even primed the underside for us. Now before that magic wears off our brush, we'll quickly base coat the bushes. Now we need to paint the Goomba. For him we'll be using this conch shell, yellow ochre, and Abaddon black. He needed the custom paint job both because I couldn't find a shade of colored clay that matched closely enough, and because he shares colors with the floor tiles in the game. One thing I kinda wish I'd done with the Goomba is sculpt his face a bit. Adding some eyebrows and teeth, maybe a groove for his mouth would have helped a lot rather than just painting it on. Off camera, I cut our set pieces down and glued them together to match what we see in the game. What I will now do on camera is cut out a perfect square for our empty question mark block, which I'm proud to say is an exact 2/3 of a Mario in size. Now back to our trusty hot wire for some hot block chopping action. So now we'll need to sand down all the edges, because, much like a modern playground, there are no harsh angles on these big blocks. That means the small one will be sitting this part out. Now we'll need to make the sky blue screws that you see fixed to the corners of the blocks. I tried using a few things I had around to make imprints into the foam, but the results just weren't looking right to me. Instead, we're going to use some good old clay. To start, we'll roll the blob down super flat between one of our sculpting tools and some parchment paper. Then I just took the top off my favorite pen and basically just used it as a cookie cutter. After that, all you really need to do is make a line down the middle and they're ready to bake. Here I wanted to make a proper indentation for where each one would go. This is because once you've been over foam with a coating of Mod Podge, it becomes much harder to add details like this. I made the imprint on both sides because I'm a bit weird and want to make sure each side of the block is mirrored. I ended up using some acrylic latex caulking to fill the gap on the floor blocks that were glued together. It worked pretty well, but I think I'll experiment with another solution next time. Now, using the other block, we can quickly mark out our floor lines. And now with it all lined up, we'll have to do more sanding. But enough of those big blocks. The small one over here needs some attention. Let's give it some little nail holes like it has in the game. Alright, things are looking pretty good and you can see the layout of the level. Just ignore the cage Mario in the corner of the screen and we'll take a moment to channel the power of the black magic Mod Podge once again.
Get me out of here!
Now we can glue on our screw heads with a dab of Mod Podge, because you don't want any loose screws like me. The screws got a black Mod Podge base coating off screen, and now it's time to give everything some color. Let's see if we can speed up the process. That was pretty good, but I think we need to pack a little more punch.
I'm tired.
Okay, let's paint on some details. We can start off with some sky blue for the screws, and the same for the flowers on the bushes. Now some black for in the nail holes of the question block, and along the notches of the screws. So I tried painting the black line along the top of the floors and it turned out awful. With the next block I tried using what is apparently called an artist's pen according to what's written on the side of it, and the whole job was done in no time. Couldn't believe how much easier it was. Now we need to make the little wood green tiger striping along the side of the block. I opted to use the pen again because I figured it would give me the best chance at a smooth result without need for touch-up. I think in the end it turned out pretty well. The only downside was how reflective the ink was on the matte finish paint. We clear the issue up for the most part with a few coats of matte spray lacquer later on though. I've got our sky sheet all base coated. What we need to do is paint the cute little cloud guy up in the corner though. All you really need to do is swirl around gratuitous amounts of white paint and add a few little dot eyes at the end. Oh, I guess I almost forgot the sky blue highlights. Don't forget those. You wouldn't look right without those. Okay, we've come far enough now that it's time to add some acrylic tubing to a few of our clay figures. Mario's the first on the chopping block as he'll need to appear as though he's jumping. So you might want to look away for this part. And now we've got a little Mario cake pop. The shell and the leaf also get the same treatment, but I think you get the picture. Now it's time to finally start gluing things together. With all the layers of Mod Podge and paint on our foam, it'll be perfectly fine to use super glue. And by using super glue like me, you too can enjoy the sudden panic of having about half a second to slightly reposition your object by about 1/4 inch before it is locked into place forever. Now, I took the liberty of drilling holes off camera for the props that will be suspended by acrylic rods, because I figured we'd all seen enough of the drill for one video. Okay, So I have everything super glued to their acrylic rods, but now we'll need to change it up for gluing them into the foam. The Goomba goes first with some hot glue. Then with some tacky glue, we'll fix the last 3 into place. And with that done, we're ready to show it all off. I guess that's that. If you stuck around this far, I'd like to say thank you, and I hope you enjoyed what you saw. If you want to see more from me, please subscribe and hit the notification bell, as I don't really have an upload schedule, so that'll keep you from missing out on the next one. I do intend to make more videos as soon as I can, probably move on to the SNES era of games next time, where I can add more detail to my work. And with that said, I hope to see you next time.